This is a Defocus Media production.
Audio Jungle.
What's up, everyone? It's your favorite optometrist, Dr. Daryl Glover.
And I'm Dr. Jennifer Lyerly, resident optometry nerd.
And welcome to Defocus Media, optometry's #1 podcast, where we discuss the hottest topics, latest technology, eyewear, practice management, and more. So sit back, relax, and defocus.
Hello. I'm so excited for this evening show. If you're joining in, I'm sure you are too, because we don't often get a chance to sit down and talk about our opinions on some of the biggest things going on in eye care. And we all know that Daryl and I could talk for quite some time about all of these, but we brought in an expert guest who has a totally different perspective from the two of us in vision care. We love working with Dr. Chris Lievens, and we're so excited to have your opinion on the show as a resident expert on what's really going on behind the scenes in optometry.
I'm super excited to be here. I love talking to you all, and there's really interesting stuff going on right now. So I'm really curious to see where our dialogue is really going to take us.
Yeah,
well, let's take a little bit of it. Oh, go ahead, Daryl. Sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to say I'm super excited simply because, you know, I've had the opportunity to meet Chris sitting on different boards and doing stuff with Alcon, and then also through you, Jen, as well, because you guys have a connection through SEO. So I feel like a little bit like the third wheel here, but at the same time, we have that relationship now where I feel like I'm a part of the club now. Even though I didn't go to SEO, I went to PCO representing. Yeah. Very excited about this content tonight because, as you had mentioned, we have a jewel, a gem on the show tonight, and I can't wait to see where the dialogue goes, Jen.
I did want to give you a second, Dr. Lievens, just to share a little bit about yourself and what you're doing in optometry right now, because SEO grads are going to be super familiar with you. But
that is true.
People who chose a different school don't have that luxury potentially. So I want to give you a chance to share your story.
So really quickly, I've been practicing optometry for 25 years, and I went to the other CO. I went to ICO for optometry school. And from there, I jumped into optometry in a number of different ways. I was in an OD private practice. I was in an OD MD practice, and I was in the United States Air Force for a few years. And I decided to go full-time into academics after having externs from 7 different programs and went to SCO, where I've been for the last 2 decades. So I've taught a bunch of courses there, and now I oversee our patient care facility on campus, as well as continue to do teaching, research, see patients. We'll see patients like all of us do.
Wow. I mean, what have you not done, man?
I haven't mowed my yard and raked up the leaves. That's on my to-do list.
I mean, I'm sitting here thinking like, yeah, I haven't accomplished anything in life yet. I need to step my game up, man. That is an impressive background. I mean, from, you know, private practice to academia to Air Force to, you know, all the other things that you have your fingers in and hands in. I mean, this is phenomenal, man. So we got some great insight coming on board this evening, Jen.
Yep, I hope so.
And, you know, like you said, on top of it, yes, you're in the academic side of things, but you're also seeing patients. You're doing patient care. And so so much of what you're doing expands through multiple different layers of optometry. So we're going to dive right into it, because I know that's why you guys are listening and joining in with us. And as always, you guys, if you have a comment or a statement or a question, type it in the comment section or on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and we will share these live and kind of talk through your opinions on things too. But our hot topic number 1 to start off the show is the FTC Contact Lens Rule. I think everyone, unless you're totally living under a rock at this point, knows that back in October 16th, this went into effect, and doctors must keep a signed document from every single patient that is prescribed contact lenses, saying that the patient has been given a finalized copy of their contact lens prescription, and this signed document must be kept for a 3-year minimum. Failure to comply results in a fine of $42,530 $42,530 per violation. How's SEO dealing with this? Like, what is the protocol right now for you guys?
Wow. If I had looked at my crystal ball and said, okay, I'm going to predict what's going to happen, I'd have said, there's not a chance that something like this is going to change in this fashion, especially not during COVID times. And so I talked to my chief of contact lens and instructor, Dan Fuller, and I said, listen, Dan, we don't have to worry about this because this ain't ever going to happen. And whoa, was I wrong. The FTC jumped in the middle of COVID times when we're just all trying to keep our heads above water and made a massive, massive change. And so, Jen, honestly, we're struggling. And so we've gone for the past 10 years trying to be a paperless office, and now we're trying to file paper again, and the patients aren't accustomed to that, and we're not accustomed to that. You know, in an ideal world, the FTC would have looked at the bigger picture of healthcare and said, listen, here's what we want to do, but let's announce it. Let's give folks that have electronic health records, those companies, time to find a way to facilitate these rules, and then we'll launch it. But no, they did it at a time when the EHR companies were just as shocked as we were. So I'm not aware of any office, any instrument, any computer that has a facile way of doing something that really feels like I'm back in the 1980s again.
I hear you. Daryl, how is your office handling this change?
I mean, in the early stages, it was like, oh, wow, this is different, you know, but we've had the protocols put in place. I mean, you know, we're 650 something offices strong. So, you know, we got to get it right because there's so many offices where you can get a fine. So we've been able to really implement a program where, you know, the patients come in, talk to the patient, you fit, get them to sign that paperwork and keep it moving for the most part. But it is, you know, it is difficult because that's just another piece of the puzzle that you have to put together for that total experience. And it can really take away from the experience as well. I don't know how you could do this with students. I just feel like this is just a recipe for disaster simply because the students are thinking about a piece of paper to be signed. They're thinking about, is this the dominant eye or is this the non-dominant eye? Do I have the right contact lens, the right base curve, the right diameter? Should I do a daily or a monthly modality? I mean, they have all these pieces that they have to look at in order to fit the lens properly to give the ultimate eye care. And now they have this little piece of paper that they have to have signed after they're done with that entire interaction with the patient. That to me is mind blowing, and I don't know how you guys can even stay afloat trying to get that figured out.
Well, you know, the good thing is we do try. Well, we have really two obligations. We have to graduate soon to be optometrists so they can actually have the talent to see patients. But we also have to have them have the ability to be successful in practice. And so this is just one of the many things that curveballs get thrown at you, and you just have to learn, adapt, and change. In this case of 2020, we're kind of used to writing new protocols every day and every week. And so this is just another one to add to the list. I'm a little disappointed that the FTC did not educate consumers as well as they could have, that this really is supposed to target soft contact lenses, that it's not covering the gambit of specialty contact lenses and scleral lenses and keratoconic fits. And, you know, and it's not that those aren't relevant, but that's not the point here. And so we have some educated consumers come in and they're asking questions that really are in left field about this. But that being said, most patients are completely unaware and surprised that we're providing these things and asking these things. And, you know, I'm curious. So I believe that the mandate is we have to retain these paper copies for 3 years.
Yes.
Where are y'all keeping yours?
We are scanning it into their EHR, and then the physical paper we are not storing. But everything is, we are actually at this point printing out little sheets of paper that we cut in half, and we have two types of paper, okay? One for the patients who have a finalized prescription at the end of the day, and one for people who are trialing lenses that have not have a finalized prescription. So the wording is different to comply. And then depending on when I hand my patient off for checkout, I'll tell them we have a finalized prescription today, or we're trialing new lenses, and they move the different piece of paper to the front and then sign and then scan back in. So it's quite a shenanigans right now.
Yeah,
I'll throw one other issue out there that we experienced early on, probably within the first 5 to 10 years of having electronic health records. And that was when we would initially scan in patient intake forms or scan in images of a visual field, for example. But when you have a big practice with lots of staff And so I think we have about 60 optometrists and 100 staff. And then you add in, as Daryl was saying, 400 or 500 students. Well, every so often somebody would hit the scan button on high res, and that all of a sudden would eliminate our entire hard drive of information. And so this now reminds me of that time that I need to tell everybody every day, okay, if you scan this stuff in, do not scan it under high res. We do not have the memory power to withstand this once again.
Wow, a problem I hadn't even thought of, but that is horrifying.
Jen, that's where the money is at now, man. Just online storage. I mean, you think about your iPhone, your iCloud, your Google Drive. I mean, if you don't have enough storage, you're not going to be able to survive in business, because you need that data, you need that storage to be able to function, because everything we host now is online and not on paper. Well, kind of not on paper in this situation, right?
Right. You know, but some of the story is not completely done yet. You know, there is still an AOA-backed effort with a lot of House and Senate leaders that are trying to get the message across that, okay, we hear the issues behind and the motivation behind these changes, but maybe let's take a step back, have a bipartisan group, not just politically, but optometry, ophthalmology, patient care, consumer advocates, the whole gambit, to say what makes the most sense for everybody. Because this one really felt like a knee-jerk reaction, where they didn't feel anyway that they got a lot of input from all the players.
Yeah, and just poor planning in general as well. Like I think that's the piece that really aggravates everyone, is that it's COVID-19. Don't put anything else out there where we're already struggling to keep doors open in some practices. We're struggling to make patients feel comfortable in some places. So, you just want to make sure that you don't add something else to the entire experience that's just going to bog down everything overall,
Dale, that's such a good point. I mean, the last thing I wanted to do was have pens at the office that my patients were picking up and touching. And now suddenly I have something that requires a patient to have to pick up and sign. And so like everything that we're doing with the cleaning, everything, well, except for now you have to touch this pen and sign this paper. So.
Oh, yeah. Jen, I was in the doctor's office yesterday with my son, and I grabbed a pen because I had to sign a form. And then I say, oh no, I grabbed the pen out of the used pen bin, not out of the clean, fresh pen bin. Mm-hmm. And I should know better. And that stuff just doesn't even ring true. It's complicated to be a patient these days, and mm-hmm. It's complicated to be a provider these days. And this just made it more complex.
Yeah, I did the same thing when I went to my to get my physical. I was like, oh my gosh, this is a dirty one. I feel like I didn't even cut my head off, and I was just like freaking out. But it's like whenever you see a bin of pins, you just think automatically, oh, a pin, let me get it. Now you got to really process, oh, is this the clean bucket or is this the dirty bucket? And like, I mean, I feel like I'm pretty sharp, but like I'm not that sharp to sit down and figure out which is clean and which is dirty, just simply because they put them side by side. Like, don't put them side by side.
Now, have either of you heard any changes with the robocalls? Because part of the update was that the robocalls were going to have to be recorded, which we wouldn't hear, but they were supposed to be, the information was supposed to be delivered in a slow, deliberate manner that we could actually understand when we listen to these messages the next day. Have you noticed a change?
I have not heard anything from so I actually never listen to these. My staff does all of it, but they have not mentioned anything to me about like, oh, the robocalls are so much better.
Right. Yeah, likewise. I haven't heard anything as well. My team fields all the calls, and I have a fantastic team that deals with that. But I definitely have to look in or check in with them tomorrow to see if they've seen an improvement.
Yeah, the only other curveball in this whole mess that caught my attention was the unusual hour selection that the FTC chose to give the practitioners time to respond to a patient's query, and they selected 40 hours. So if you're shut down for any 2-day period or a 1.5-day period in the middle of the 7-day work week, I guess we have to hire another staff person to handle that on those off days. It's just a really bizarre hour selection.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I mean, like so much of it seems so one-sided. to me with very clearly with what they chose to create legislation around and what they chose not to address. And you mentioned earlier about there's still a chance that we can make changes from this, as Dr. Lievens mentioned. It's called the Contact Lens Rule Modernization Act, Senate Bill 4613. Unfortunately, right now, it has faced a delay. As of Wednesday, the 18th, it was kind of put into kind of a delay area, and it's going to need some more senators to sign on board to bring it back in front of Congress to get a vote before Congress kind of shuts down for the end of the year. So you need all of us and everyone listening, if you want to get involved, we need our Congress people to get involved backing this bill. And you can help make that happen by texting FTC Fix to 855-465-5124. And the AOA is helping all of us get in touch with our senators and kind of make our plea for why they should be getting involved with this.
Fantastic. I mean, I guess that's one of the pros of being a legislative profession, right? We can fight for our rights, and we come together as a team and put the money up. We can make a change, because at the end of the day, we know what talks, and it's money and it's numbers. So we got to make it happen.
Honestly, it's a credit to activities like we're doing tonight to get the message out, because in these COVID times, we're not having meetings. We're not having get-togethers, either locally, regionally, nationally. In fact, we're not even having faculty meetings. And so it's going to be things just like we're talking through tonight to get the word out, to hopefully inspire people to get on board and hopefully make a difference.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to move into our next topic, which I really, everything, we should preface this by saying everything we're talking about tonight, these are our opinions. We're not representing any sort of institutions or higher learning, or, Daryl, you're not here representing my eye doctor, even though, you work there. We're our personal and our opinions on this. And I think that's what's going to make this a fun and interesting conversation. But new optometry schools are continuing to kind of pop up. Sometimes they pop up and then they die away as ideas that fizzled in the wind. But the most recent one announced on October 12th, the Rocky Mountain University of Health Professions announced an intent to develop a new college of optometry. And the plan is to start enrolling in 2023. So my question to all of us are, do we need, do you feel like more optometry schools are needed?
So I'm glad you prefaced by saying these are our own opinions. So I'm not speaking on behalf of any school, just myself. And so, the question is a complex one. Do we need more schools? Do we need more optometrists? Do we need more person power? And those are all slightly different concepts. To make it very simple on the latter issue, do we need more manpower, woman power, person power? And the reality is, yes, we actually do. And I think that most of the research to date has suggested that optometry, and certainly ophthalmology, is understaffed. But the big caveat to that is, you just have to be willing to go where the work is. So not every single person can live in the middle of a metropolis. And when I say metropolis, I'm defining that really loosely. I'm not talking necessarily about New York, LA, Chicago, much smaller cities where you could realistically live 30 miles outside of a reasonably sized city, and that's still considered rural, where there's need for extra professionals and extra practitioners. You can't have every single person wanting to live on the coasts. They have to be more willing to go where the work is. And if that's the case, there is actually tremendous opportunity. There's still practices shutting their doors because they cannot find people to bring in to their, and when I say rural, I'm also defining that loosely. I'm not saying necessarily in the middle of nowhere. I'm saying within a stone's throw from a decent sized city.
When we're looking at some of the statistics, the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics is saying that they're expecting demand for optometrists to grow by about 30% in the next 10 years. And so thinking of that, like definitely there would be a shortage in this need for care. The new school, by the way, is being proposed in Utah, where currently in that area of the United States, there is probably more of the rural practices that are needing more support and help. And I think like looking at the numbers statistically, when you have a school in the area, it does tend to drive more optometrists to stay in the local community. Though I will say at SCO, when I was a student there, we had a ton of students from Utah that were coming to school. And I know there's the school since then that's open in Arizona, I think has a pretty good population of students from Utah that attend there as well.
That is true. I'll tell you this, and this is just strictly anecdotal, because so in the middle of COVID times, like all the other schools, have had to do our interviews for new students in a totally different fashion. We cannot have them live. So we would do a sit-down virtual interview like we're doing right now and walk them through campus on a virtual tour. It's really the best that we have. And so I've participated in a number of new student applicants to SCO where I work. And I'll tell you this, they knock my socks off. Every time I meet with them virtually, I'm incredibly impressed. So the talent and caliber and interest in optometry is out there. So that's very good news. In terms of the specific new school, I actually had a couple colleagues work at that university several years ago, well before the decision was made to open a new optometry school, and they were both optometrists. And so it's possible that they begin to lay the groundwork for this eventuality that's taking place. I certainly wish them the best because, there's a lot. It's hard enough to open a school in non-COVID times. To do that today and try to hire faculty, that's just a really, really difficult thing to undertake. But I think if they put their mind to it, they can do well. We were talking about supply and demand. You know what the year 2021 is relevant to in our world of patients? And 2021, the millennial generation becomes presbyopic for the first time.
Oh, yes.
Those born in 1981 become 40. And that's a massive group. And so they're going to keep us busy through the next generation for sure.
Daryl, us millennials are becoming presbyopes. So optometry's need is going through the roof.
Jen, I'm truly a seasoned millennial, so I'll hit it first. So, I know.
Just as soon as we get all of our college friends in the chair for their first multifocal contact lens fit, my hair is going to be totally white at that point.
Oh my goodness! Look, my beard is already starting to get a few whites in there, Jim. My wife loves it, so I keep them. But at first, I was trying to cut them out. She's like, "No, keep it, baby. It looks so good." So I've been rocking. But this is a very interesting topic. Simply because for me, I feel like people living longer, so we need more optometrists. There's no doubt about it. And we are on the front line when it comes to eye care. But also, I like to say that we're on the front line when it just comes to healthcare, because we are the gatekeepers into the healthcare system. We tend to find things first and refer them to the right physician to be able to take care of those problems. So I do feel like we need more optometrists. There's no doubt about it. The issue that I have is that we need to increase the representation of minorities in eye care. And we keep putting these schools in places where it's not increasing the diversity in eye care. For me, it would make sense to put an optometry school in a historic Black college university. I mean, we need more Black optometrists. There's only 3%. So if we want to attract more Black optometrists, we have to go where there are Black people that have interest in eye care and healthcare. And there's schools out there like Howard or Morehouse where we can actually facilitate and make these, or Howard where we can actually facilitate and make these things happen. But no one is actually taking the initiative to make that happen. And I know it's been conversation in the past with some of the big leaders in eye care, but we continue just to put them in places where the representation is not big in African Americans, Blacks, or Hispanics. And I feel like we need to start targeting those areas more, because at the end of the day, 2050, the minority is going to be the new majority, and we need to be able to reflect exactly what our patient, our demographic looks like with our doctors as well. So that's the biggest issue that I have. But I do agree we do need more schools, but we just need to see more diversity and put these locations in the right place.
Yeah, Daryl, that's a great issue, and there's no secret sauce that I'm aware of to tackle that. One thing that I don't know if it's been tried effectively, but I have to imagine if we as the optometric professionals were able to get the message out to younger minority, high schoolers, beginning college students about this profession, and then they went to the leaders at Howard and Morehouse and say, we want an optometry program here, that potentially would drive it rather than being top down. Because if the students aren't aware, it's hard to bring them in. We have to do a much better job of educating earlier and earlier to say how great of a profession this is and how you can do this. You can be a doctor just like us.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, the earlier you get exposure, the better it is. I mean, there's so many folks out there that have had an optometrist in their life early in life, and that optometrist took them in and told them how great the profession is. I mean, I just had my first student that shadowed me and that told me when she was in middle school, I want to say, that she wanted to be an optometrist. And she recently just got into several optometry schools. And that was because she had the exposure at an early age. And now she was like at that same visit, she's like, I want to be just like you, Dr. Glover. I want to be an optometrist. And now she has 3 or 4 schools that she's got accepted to. So that early exposure goes a long way, and we need more of that. So I hope with the future schools that they bring about, that they really be selective in regards to the locations and the demographics that those schools serve.
So I'm going to kind of go out here with my opinion. I don't believe we need more schools, but I do believe we need more students. In general, the number of applicants for optometry school is really, really flat. And right now, it's about, for every one available optometry school seat, there's about 1.5 students that apply. So basically, if you apply, you are going to get accepted. And we're seeing that reflection in some pretty unspectacular board passage rates, I would say, across the board. Like, to me, I'd want if board passage rates to be like 85% or higher. Like a good solid B still feels like good, but if you've got passage rates of 60s and 70%, like that's horrifying. The cost of going to optometry school is too expensive to be putting students into school where they may never actually become practicing doctors. And my concern is with newer programs and things like that, it's very hard to establish a rigorous program that's going to prepare students to pass boards. And instead, if we could focus on what you guys are talking about, driving interest in this profession, getting high schoolers, middle schoolers, people involved in this as an opportunity, and getting more applicants and more people interested in optometry, then that would naturally, eventually, as the need increased, drive the potential for more schools. But doing it top down, more schools, but not any more students, that's just a recipe for disaster, with more people accruing student debt at an astronomical rate and never getting the payoff in return. And we know what a huge issue and burden these for-profit colleges and high student debt is for American as a population right now, above and beyond just optometry school. So I just feel like this approach is maybe driving in the wrong direction.
And then the other piece is that, it's getting into optometry school, there was a lot of hoops you had to jump through. I mean, it was like probably one of the most difficult healthcare professions to get into, simply because you had to do all these additional courses, the OAT. I mean, it was just like a long list of stuff. And when you think of optometry, it's not at the top of the food chain in regards to healthcare industry that people want to get into, or professions. So why are we making it so difficult to get in when we need more optometrists and we need quality applicants to make this profession grow and be great and continue to prosper? So I think another big issue is just, the process. And I know ASCO and the schools are working together to make it easier. So now I know some schools you can take the GRE and that'll, get you in, and some other tests and things of that nature. Dr. Lievens, I'm pretty sure you could probably really touch on this better, because you have firsthand experience day in and day out with the students and see what comes in and what goes out of your doors day in and day out.
In terms of my opinion about how we create these artificial barriers to enter, I think you are absolutely right. Years ago when I was an undergraduate, before computers, I didn't even know where the optometry schools were. I had to call on the phone and look in the phone book and ask for pamphlets to be sent to me. And I didn't know the prerequisites. There was no optometry advisor that I had a connection to. So I got to my senior year of college and I was a math major. And they said, well, you need to take microbiology and biochemistry. I was like, I can't even get in those courses. I don't have the prerequisites. So I had to do all this independent study just to get a chance to get accepted in optometry school that I didn't have to do for other professional programs, like medical school, for example. And so I think a nationwide task force looking at, let's make sure the barriers are appropriate for optometry. Let's not create them artificially and make them too high so we can get more applicants, more quality applicants. Let's not restrict optometry school to, unless you're a biology or chemistry major, you're not going to get in because you're not going to have those classes. Let's open it up and be more diverse people, as more diverse educational backgrounds. So I think that there's really some steps that we can take in that fashion. On the good side, our students are incredibly smart in terms of doing what they need to do. And now, with information at their fingertips at a moment's notice in their pocket, they easily can surf at a moment what prereqs for every school there is and what hoops they need to jump through, and they somehow tackle it. Because I am blown away by the caliber of student entering optometry today, which is only going to bode well for the future of optometry. For a long time, schools weren't opening. We had the same bolus of optometry schools for a long time, and now we're in the era of new schools opening up. And I know in terms of the populace of optometry, there was a knee-jerk reaction saying, whoa, the AOA needs to do something about this, but they can't. They can't restrict trade. Anybody who wants to open a quality program so that if they can be accredited, they can certainly do so. And we're a small profession, so we need these programs to do well and provide quality education and find great faculty, because they're going to be with us and be our colleagues within a few years.
Absolutely. Well, I think we all kind of got some great points in on this one. And this is a topic that I only expect more schools to announce intent, because this is when colleges are looking at a way, how do we drive more tuition dollars? Optometry schools, dental schools, physical therapy, nursing, like all these healthcare schools is a way to drive profit to smaller colleges and universities. So it's going to keep coming up. And then it's just a matter of what are we doing with optometry kind of on the back end, like, okay, well, how do we get schools are interested? How do we get more students interested? And so all of you guys doing that great work on your social media and speaking with students in your office about basically living and breathing advertisement for how great optometry is. Even if you're not even putting your mind to doing it on purpose, you're being the best advocate for our profession possible. So thank you guys for all your hard work and sharing your love for the profession.
Absolutely.
All right, let's jump into the next topic. This one's raised a lot of ire earlier in the year, and then it's cooled off a little bit because the change got postponed. But guess what, guys? It's December 1st. And so that means in 1 month, this topic is going to be coming back up again, because earlier in the year, VSP had announced its plans to change how its formulary is kind of set up. That is now slated to begin January 1st. They will be providing higher reimbursement to labs and eye care providers for dispensing and selling their preferred materials, and cutting reimbursements on non-preferred brands by about 50%. If doctors choose to prescribe or sell, for example, Essilor would be a non-preferred brand materials, they would do this at a significantly lower reimbursement rate. And big key point here that people were unhappy about, they cannot bill the patient for any differences. Let's talk about this and how we're going to handle this. So basically being told, okay, reimbursement rates are going to be cut and the patient cannot pay any differences. You'll just have to accept that lower pay if that's what you choose to do.
Well, I mean, first and foremost, as a healthcare professional, as a physician, as a doctor, I do not want someone to tell me how I should practice. And when it comes to utilizing, frames and lenses, I prescribe from the chair. So this really impacts how I can prescribe from the chair, right? So I'm not a fan of it. The one good thing I can say is that I am part of a big organization, my eye doctors. We have people in great places that can fight for our rights and make things happen on the back end that probably none of us will even know that's taking place on the back end. But I think it's wrong. I think, if you have a great product and it speaks for itself, let it do what it needs to do. Don't try to, tell me that I have to prescribe your product to be able to make more to my bottom line and to keep the doors open. That makes no sense to me. Just put a better product out there than whatever other product is on the market to make people want to go to your product in general. So I feel like we shouldn't be to the point where they're putting us in handcuffs that we have to utilize their products. And that goes for anyone. It could be VSP, it could be GGG, ABC, DEFG, whatever it may be company. But I just feel like as eye care professionals, if we want to be able to give our patients the best products and prescribe from the chair and give them something that's going to accommodate their lifestyle, allow them to live their best lives, let us have the freedom. We already have to deal with this with the medical companies out there. Don't start doing it when it comes to frames and lenses. That is not showing that you are all about the optometrist. That is showing that you're all about that bottom line, your own pockets, and you're not helping to push the profession forward.
Strong take, Dr. Glover, but I totally agree.
And look, I love VSP. I see a ton of VSP patients coming in, but at the same time, we have to look at what's right for our patients. Don't let patients only have one option when there's something that's better out there, and then hurt the eye care professional for making sure that they have the best options to live their best lives. To me, it just doesn't make sense.
So, man, the fire was coming out of my ears when this topic arose in 2020. Again, in the middle of COVID, when we were shut down. I just couldn't believe it. Now, I'm going to back up and say something really nice. VSP has done some phenomenal things. They impressed me to no end when Katrina hit and what they did to bring optometry back to that area and patients to be served. They went to say over and above is an understatement biggest understatement I've ever met. So they've done some phenomenal things, but this is really surprising. I still kept my letter dated June 10th from VSP, dear doctor. They didn't put my name on it. And they clued into a few things, but then they ignored a few other things. So yeah, Jen, you mentioned that this was originally supposed to go into effect September 1st, but then was postponed. But the photochromic change preceded this change, and that one was never postponed. So there are still the photochromic issues with transitions and the VSP brand, which have still not changed. VSP is a non-for-profit. So I really don't understand the rationale to do this, because what it does is it makes practitioners think about profitability over proper patient care. And I'd love to say, well, everyone will do what's right. Everyone will think of the patient first. But when you throw that in the middle of where the world's in challenge anyway, boy, it's confounding. And it's going to potentially make some people make decisions based on dollars, not on optimal care. And that's a horrible place to be.
Yeah, this is what I don't like about it. It's almost forcing doctors to misrepresent things to their patients. I mean, so like when a patient comes in and they say like, we'll use transitions as an example, because I think this is an easy example. Like, well, I really love those transitions. I want those again. And you see they're on VSP. Like, okay. And so the practitioner can be like, well, okay, so you get the VSP photochromic because you know that's the one that you're going to have to do in order to get your full reimbursement back. So the patient thinks that they got transitions.
Yes.
And so what am I as a doctor going to be like, well, we can't get you the transitions because those aren't preferred on your formulary. And then of course, like patients like, oh, they call it VSP. They do this. They're like, oh yeah, you can get the transitions. That's fine. Well, they said I can get the transitions. Okay. So it puts me as the doctor in the bad place being like, oh, we can't give you those transitions that you want. Because I have to, but like, so you can either choose to go through this garbled explanation of all this that's going to confuse the patient, or just not tell the patient and lead them to believe they're getting something that they're not getting. And both of those are terrible options, yes. But that's the position that we're being put in.
Sadly, the patients typically don't react negatively to their plan. They react negatively to us.
Yeah, absolutely. And usually if they do call their plan because we've said something, their plan will kind of turn it around like, oh, well, your doctor could choose to accept the lower payment and get you those transitions that you say that you want. And so then it's still like everything puts it back on us because the patient doesn't have to pay more for them. The patient can get it. You as the doctor would be the one who would make that sacrifice, right?
I love, Jen, that you use their terminology at the beginning to kick this off, that these were the preferred brands. Well, who prefers them? I don't prefer them. My patients don't prefer them. VSP prefers them. So that's not preferred at all. It's your brand. So you want me to be honest to the patient, tell me that you want us to prescribe your brands, not nothing that's preferred.
Yeah. Yeah. And, and the thing is, with VSP, they've done an incredible job with putting people in our chairs, so I take my hat off to them in regards to that. I think they've done a phenomenal job. But I think at some point in time, you have to just fall back and allow optometrists, allow opticians, allow our eye care professionals to prescribe what's the best for the patient to accommodate their lifestyle. Don't hold my hands and tell me what I have to prescribe. So I really feel at some point, I feel it in my soul, in my body, Jen, that they're going to turn this around and make it right. Because there's a lot of people that take VSP and a lot of people don't feel too strongly about what they're doing right now. And if they're really about the profession, they're going to make it happen. As a matter of fact, I will make a call out. I want the president of VSP to come on this show and have this conversation with Jen and I. Let's talk about it. Let's see where your mind is. Let's see what you guys are talking about. We are a platform where we're open to anyone that wants to come on and express your side. We're not going to, chop you up or make it a shame show on you. We want to give you a platform to express why you did what you did and how it's supposed to move the profession forward and how it's going to help everyone all together in the profession. So I invite, VSP to come on and let's have this conversation and let's have a real conversation, see where we can build and make the whole profession just move forward, because you guys play a major role in eye care, a major role. You put butts in our seats and we need that, and we need you guys and you guys need us. So we need to work together as one family, one unit, and make this happen. All right. So we invite you guys on the show. Email us, thefocusedmedia@gmail.com. Jen and I are ready, and we're ready to open up this conversation.
I do want to take a moment just to lament, and obviously like the ship has sailed, there's no way to go back in time to do this, but this is kind of the big con of all of these mergers and kind of, so like you get into these situations where the same group that owns the insurance, owns the doctor's offices, owns the materials, owns the contact lenses, owns the frame lines. I mean, and like, then we're all siloed in and there's no competition. It's all strangled out because everybody owns like the entire service sector. All right. And so this is, I mean, people talk about like, small businesses are being killed in America. This upward structuring is what does it. It kills small businesses, and it starts so simple, so easy, just two companies like merging together, and then suddenly you got like this entire funnel, and we're stuck in the funnel right now. But that doesn't mean we need to be all doom and gloom and there's no way we can get out, we're all destined to failure. But I think we're seeing how bad the funnel can be if we don't try to like make a few rules to prevent this from happening.
Yeah. When is the next shoe going to drop? That's exactly the concern, because if someone does this and they do it well, and I'll use that loosely, who else is going to do the same thing? Yes. I just thought the timing was very poor. And in our practice, this affects our brands that we promote to patients. So we're totally in the non-preferred brands in the guise of VSP. And so when we looked at the cut in reimbursement to us, and the margin was almost 50% in a lot of cases, which is enormous. Mm-hmm. The other thing that really bothers me is some of the specific claims that were made in their preferred brands versus the non-preferred brands. And it was, to me, really shady. And I'm using that purposefully because in the example of photochromics, in order to be the preferred category of photochromic, for example, they chose speed. Because if you wear photochromics that change color when you go in and outside, people like it to change fast, okay? But that's very misleading, because when they compare the speed to the highest quality product that gets much clearer and much darker, it's like saying, hey, let's run a race around the track, but you get to start halfway down and finish halfway sooner than me. the race is not equitable. They looked at the performance of at the middle of the visual spectrum, 555 nanometers. Okay, fine. But the eyes don't just see 555. We see 380 to 780. They didn't compare anywhere else. They only compared one. So they created these artificial assessment tools to artificially make their product preferred. And it's so different than the higher quality products that, again, you're asking me, the practitioner and the potential and the business owner in a lot of cases, to choose between optimal patient care and profitability. And I do not like that. At the end of the day, we got in this to doctor patients and help them see well. For many people have said over and over and over, if you just do what's best for the patient, everything will work out in the end. But now this is throwing a curveball to that.
Yeah.
Well, I think the conversations around this are only just beginning, but guys, January 1st, we're a month away, and this change is going to take place. And if you aren't prepared in your office, you're going to notice it and what paycheck comes in 2 or 3 months into Q1. So we need to be prepared to bring these fiery conversations back out so that potentially a change or a redirection can occur.
There is still some hot topic on the legalese, like you mentioned before. There was a House resolution bill backed by many organizations and vehemently opposed by vision plans to both optometry and the dental side to prevent actions like this. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens with that.
And what's the latest with the AOA on this?
They are working with, I think last count I could find online was 52 House members in the American Dental Association to try to tackle this. But like you mentioned before, Daryl, and you did, Jen, as well, we need activists. We need people to contact their legislators who probably don't know this stuff. Because again, it was in the middle of really trying times when we were busy thinking about other stuff. So we don't want this to get washed away and under the rug and become a matter of habit. We need to actively get change through our professional organizations and just locally through our legislators.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to our final topic, because this one is one that has been, due to COVID, all over optometry this year. And not only just the conversation about telehealth in general, but is it here to stay? And there's a lot of pros and cons on this subject. I did want to just mention a few of the technology items that are available right now for people practicing optometry, just to kind of give you an idea of where telemedicine is at in our industry. Digital Optometrics, it's an optical software company where doctors evaluate patients remotely through a live video conference platform. Again, hiring optometrists right now, available currently. The ESG 1200 Eye Screening Globe by GlobeCheck, a little bit of a mouthful, is a kiosk that has an autorefraction, IOP, anterior segment, and fundus photography, corneal topography, and OCT, all built into the kiosk. Currently, these kiosks are only available at Eyecare provider offices, but the company is selling and leasing units to hospitals, retail chains, airports, and malls. And would have a technician that would operate them, would not necessarily have to be a doctor operating them. So these are some of the telemedicine, above and beyond just online refraction. I mean, we all saw the stats about 1-800's online exam and contact lens renewal services were up over 100% over this time last year when we looked at during COVID closures. So we have seen a lot of companies incorporating telemedicine platforms to perform eye exams. Where do you think the state of the industry is right now when it comes to telehealth?
Dr. Lievens, I'll let you take this one, man. Sure. I'm interested in your perspective.
Okay, so a lot of this became a hot topic, as you mentioned, when our practices shut down, when we were forced to do work from home or just go to the office and try to contact patients who were calling us, but we didn't have an ability to see them. So that pushed the story probably years ahead of when it was ready to be pushed. However, that story is probably not going to go away. And so I'll answer this in a few different ways. Technology has a way of improving quickly in recent years. And so today, I do not believe that we have quality telehealth out there in the way that other practitioners and other modes of medical care have telehealth. You know, we need to see things in the eye, which happens to be a very small organ, and we need to see it with movement, our movement, and we need to see it with depth. And many of the things that we see in imaging these days are still very two-dimensional without the ability to move around. And plus, a lot of times we're relying on the communication interview with the patient. And as you know, as providers, some patients are highly reliable and some are highly unreliable. I remember when I was early into practice and my neighbor called me from the beach and said, "Hey, my eye's a little irritated." And so I took him at his word and told him to get some eye drops, till finally I told him he needs to come home, and found that he had hundreds of metallic foreign bodies in his eyes from go-karting and having steel wool muffler blow in his face, not wearing goggles. Just a few weeks ago, I had a neighbor's dad reach out to me because his eye was a little irritated. He had just had a procedure. And I'm like, well, it doesn't sound bad. Again, I'm thinking maybe some lubrication, but thankfully he sent me a picture and I'm like, oh my God, I think you have a perforated globe. So what sounds benign isn't always benign. And the technology today limits us in our ability to do what we can do in an exam room that a computer just cannot do. You know, as we look at each other on the screen today, right now in this virtual setting, we can kind of appreciate dimensions by size differences and being close and far, but it's not like doing an eye exam. Virtual eye exams are completely different and they're dangerous. But remember, technology has a way of getting there. So I'm not saying we won't ever be there. I'm just saying what's out there now is not adequate to safely see patients. Now, if you see 100 patients a day, 99 of them may be perfectly healthy, but that one patient that's not and who happens to be very difficult to examine is just as important as the other 99. So we can't say that this technology is 99% effective, because who wants to be the 1% of person that got a bad exam and had a bad outcome because they're doing something via telehealth?
We know. Daryl, I totally. So here's the thing, and Dr. Lievens, we've been on kind of like one of these virtual panels together before with the company where they were talking about incorporating telemedicine in the very near future. And when we have these conversations with, this is what always kind of bothers me. Nobody ever wants to talk about the technology and like what the technology can do. It's always just like, oh, well, we'll figure that part out. But would you see patients virtually and get them the contact lenses virtually? Like, yeah, but no one's shown me a technology that would allow me to do that. So why I can't say yes, because I've never seen the technology that would make that ethically and morally possible. But if you design the technology, then I'll take a look at it and maybe I'll change my mind. But we're always leading with like the idea of it and without the technology part of it. And that is so confusing and so baffling to me.
Well,
Daryl, what are your thoughts?
That's how the tech works these days, right? You know, you get a new phone and it doesn't work and they say, well, we'll get that in the next update.
Yeah. I mean, all great points. And I'll be the one on here that'll be the oddball and say, I'm all for
I know you are.
There's no doubt about it. You know, I wear it proudly. I think there's a place for it. I think the patient and the consumer wants it. I think it's going to take time to get perfect, but it's going to have to take some time to build up. There's going to be some trial and error. Now, I'm not saying that we need to spend all this error on all our patients and jack up everyone's eyes out there, but I do think that we need to be more open-minded and think outside of the box in regards to how this can complement how we do patient care. And we just take the baby steps with it. So I'm all for it. Do I accept every single thing? No, but I'm a big fan of telehealth and disruptive technology, and I'm a big fan of the optometrists owning it. I feel like if we don't put our footprint on it, and I feel like if we don't hold it and we don't take it in, we're going to lose access to this, and outside parties are going to dictate even more how we practice and where our patients go. So I feel like us as optometrists, whenever we hear about telehealth or disruptive technology, we can't just say, get out of here. We need to figure out how we can implement what is out there into our practice to make it better. Just the other day, Jen and I had a conversation on dry eye. It was called the Real World Dry Eye. And we were talking about, like how in the world can you implement telehealth with dry eye? And, there was a piece that Jen and I was having a conversation about that, sometimes patients just need to have conversation, give you an update, tell you what's going on. That's a great piece just to get started with. So we shouldn't throw that away. The other piece is maybe even look at showing frames. Patients may want to see a frame style. Maybe they can't come in. Maybe they don't want to come in. Maybe you don't have virtual try-on, or maybe you do have some new technology like virtual try-on, but maybe you don't. And maybe you need to show them the actual frame in your practice. That's another way to utilize this technology. Then you also want to look at, when you're talking about telehealth, maybe even wearables. I mean, there is different things that you could do with watches. We know glasses are going to come back in style soon, where they have some type of digital aspect to it, because Essilor is working with Facebook. Those are two big companies that have a lot of money and a lot of smart people working for them. So I just feel like we need to take ownership of this technology and a telehealth platform to really move our profession forward, because if not, we're going to lose out on it. And I don't want to be the one that's saying that, man, why do they have access to it? And us as eye care professionals don't. That's just going to push us more out of the way and make consumers more confused and have access to stuff that's going to hurt them more down the road. I'd rather us be the ones that sit by the technology to someone else, basically. So that's why I love telehealth and technology. I'll stop now.
A couple of things you said, certainly resonate, and I couldn't agree more. If anybody, and it's not just optometry, anybody buries their head in the sand for what potentially is coming, they never get out of the sand. They just go deeper in the hole. So yes, being part of the solution to make improvements and embracing what you can, because I did say the technology is going to find a way to improve, where I'm embracing it full-heartedly. I just don't think it's there yet. But there's another thing that you said that scares me a little bit. And this is where I think organized optometry really needs to work hard. Many of the things that are out there right now that actually can offer health examinations remotely do it across state lines. And unless you have an optometrist that's duly licensed in all 50 states, they can very easily and quickly be barred from telehealth immediately, unless we can have some form of reciprocity and licensure across state lines. And that can happen at a moment's notice.
That is such a great point. And people will oftentimes wonder, why is it with all these like 1-800 companies or whatever, it's only an MD ever that signs the prescriptions? And that's because these people that are doing remote exams need to be able to get prescriptions to customers from all across the United States, not just in one state. And
Right.
So it has to be an MD, because in optometry, we can only prescribe for patients in North Carolina, Tennessee. If Alaska person signed on, we couldn't sign their prescription online. So we're useless to these online refractive companies because of the way our profession is legislated. And something that we do potentially, if we do want to be a player, like you said, in this owning telemedicine, we're going to have to get that figured out on a legislative level.
Yeah. I mean, I think it'll be pretty cool, pretty dope, to be able to have one board and be able to practice wherever you want, and make sure that that standard is the same. That way we can practice full scope optometry in every state instead of certain states. I mean, I think that'll change the game completely, and it'll make the patients' lives so much easier. And we'll see there'll be so many healthier people out there just simply because we're able to practice full scope. I mean, we go to school, we learn this stuff. I mean, how much does it suck to be able to graduate from school, pay all this money for this education, and then go to a state where you can't practice full scope? I mean, that's a big smack in the face,
Right.
I mean, we really need to, again, I think this has been kind of the theme of the conversation, work with our legislators, work with our groups, the AOA, our local districts, whatever it may be, give money, give time, push the legislation, and make things change, man, because the game is getting real now. And if we don't jump into it and make this happen, we're going to fall by the wayside, and we're going to be looking at optometry like, where did it go? So we got to turn up, make it right.
One thing was clear from tonight's discussion is we have a lot of battles to fight in optometry. This is no time to sit back and take it easy for the end of the year. We've got a lot of work to do. But also, like, it's exciting. And this is not supposed to be a negative conversation. I know we've raised some concerns tonight, but it's exciting that we have the opportunity to make a change in our profession and be involved and participate and steer the direction. Nothing's decided, nothing's set in stone, and that's a wonderful and exciting time to be alive.
Yeah, you picked some tough topics but all of us said how great a profession optometry is and how we still love it. We all said that.
Absolutely. And every topic that we touched on, from just the school situation to the VSP situation to the telehealth situation. What else was it, Jen? I'm missing one here. To the
FTC Contact Lens Rule.
Like, these are all things that will greatly impact our profession and that we need to have access to. Like, we need to make sure our patients get their contacts, there's no doubt about it. But we do need more schools. We do need VSP to, step it up and make sure that they're not controlling how we prescribe from the chair. And we do need the telehealth in order to be able to take the eye care industry to the next level. So we just need to really work together to push it, you guys. But this has been a great conversation. Jim came up with the questions. I didn't even look at these. I was just like, you know what? Let me just kind of freestyle it and see.
This is blind trust. 5 years into our partnership, he knows that it's going to be good.
And they were dead on. I can't wait till the next hot topics, Jen. This was a job well done. And I'm serious, VSP. If you guys are listening, let's get you on the show. It's long overdue. We've been waiting for you guys to come on. You guys got a great team of people that's out there, but we have some questions and we need some answers. So let's make it happen, you guys.
You'll have a great night and so much fun hanging out with you as always.
Absolutely. You guys have a great one. All right, colleagues, and it's a wrap. Thank you dearly for hanging out with the Defocus Media team. We hope truly something resonated with you. And if it did, be sure to give us 5 stars and make sure you follow us on all social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, you named it. And our handle is at Defocus Media on all platforms. And until next time, be sure to keep it 2020, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode.